Gordon D'Arcy has joined us in studio. Alan Quinlan still here alongside Owen as well. Gordon, thanks a million. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
We were informed this morning, Tommy going through his research tells us that you lads made your international debut on the same day.
Yeah.
Almost 18 years ago.
A long time ago.
Yes, absolutely.
We were chatting about it. All went wrong for me after that. I played for a little bit. He didn't play for about 4 or 5 years. They had very few caps after the World Cup in 99.
Here we are. There's you, Gordon.
Yeah,
shaved head.
And
Romania back in 99.
You actually believe I've lost weight in that picture, which is frightening.
Was that a statement, the haircut at the time, or had you head lice or something?
No, I think it was probably trying to look slimmer, maybe. I don't know.
We couldn't find Quinny on the ball during the game, so we had to get a stock photo from him.
Yeah.
And he's
from 99.
Probably at the bottom of a ruck, enjoying the benefits of not being a video referee.
You were only
involved.
18 or 19? 18 was it?
19, yeah.
19.
Was that haircut known as the Dave McIntyre in 1999 as well?
You have an age today, Quinny. There's not a lot of difference there.
Kept the same hair as well.
You have. A lot of us are a lot thinner in the intervening 18-year periods. Up top, that is. It's an awful lot of stuff to get through today, lads. We're going to get into these Champions Cup fixtures. The Munster-Leicester game is live and off the ball on Saturday evening. But Joey Carberry's everywhere today. He was doing some interviews with the media yesterday. The headline basically being that he's not going anywhere. And it's on the back, I guess, the question that was being put to him after what Eddie O'Sullivan was saying, Gordon, on Monday Night Rugby a couple of weeks ago and off the ball, that if he really wants to be a world-class 10, he needs to spend more time in the 10 jersey. And the way Johnny Sexton is playing and staying injury-free, he might have to wait a long time for that to happen. It was never really a story, that was it? He would never consider leaving, for now anyway.
Not really. I don't think there's any... he's not going to be necessarily challenging for that number 10 spot straight away. I think, that natural transfer of knowledge is, he is the best number 10 in the world, and I don't think Joey is the complete player yet either. So I think there's much more for him to learn with being in and around that a player of Johnny's skill level, and I still think there's a huge amount for him to learn from Stuart Lancaster. So there is, if you look at it purely from an international perspective, and you say, well, we need our backup number 10 to be playing week in, week out, because he clearly is the best the number 2 at the moment. I think he's performing capably well when he plays in the position. And his, only time will tell how that affects on the international level. But he's playing well. He looks happy, and you can't put a price on a player being happy.
Realistically, at the moment, Alan, Byrne is the second 10 at Leinster, in that he's the guy who's playing in the 10 jersey when Joey and Jonathan aren't there. Would you fear that we might end up in a position that we did in the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup in 2015, that we lose our main man going into an absolutely massive game, and Joey Carberry has not spent any time or anywhere near enough time playing test rugby at the fly half position, and then he's thrust in to try and win us a game?
A little bit of a concern, but I think he's that good that he doesn't. He's the type of player that I think he can play at that level, even in a big test match if he's thrown in there. I think he's a superb talent. He reminds me of Bowden Barrett. I think just you can play him anywhere in the back line. He can play 12, 13, wing, full back. You could probably play him scrum half as well. He's that talented. So I wouldn't be. I think Ross Byrne is someone who may have to make a decision because he's number 3 effectively, I think.
But will always play a lot of rugby as long as he's not. Yeah, as long as he doesn't reach international standards, he'll play a huge amount of rugby.
Yeah, the only thing about that is there's been a lot of injuries in the Leinster back line. You've seen Issa coming in and out of the field. You've seen Rob Kearney hasn't played really any rugby this year before coming into the November internationals. So that we're kind of looking at it as that is the status quo. Had there been other options in the back 3, where would Joey Carberry have played in those big matches? Now we can't answer that. It's a nice thought piece, but would Byrne have started over Joey Carberry? That would have meant Joey probably going onto the bench. So that's the bit. So Joey's, as Quinny is saying, his ability, his versatility is so powerful that you just want him on the field. And it just happened that.
And we view that as a negative sometimes, don't we? Yeah. Versatility. We go, well, particularly from my own position, the back row. Are you a 6, are you a 7, are you an 8? Sometimes you can be all 3, and then you end up being on the bench because you cover. So I just think someone like Carberry, we should embrace his talent, and I don't think he should go anywhere. I don't think he needs to play 10 every week. Of course, I'm sure Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster will try and manage him in some Pro 14 games when they get the opportunity to play him 10. But I think there's a lot being made out of it. And you know, Eddie's point, Eddie O'Sullivan's point in theory is it probably makes some sense for him. And in an ideal world, you'd love to have 4 Irish 10s in all the provinces, all competing with each other in a perfect world. But the guy is only playing at this level for over 13, 14 months. He's got to stay where he is, where he's been nurtured, where he's, and as he says himself, he loves it there, and he will learn a lot. D'Arcy's saying Stuart Lancaster has been fantastic for him there as well, so he'll learn a lot there. So I don't think he needs to go anywhere.
You know, when you frame it, when you look at it in that very, very narrow frame or lens of saying, okay, well, if the Rugby World Cup repeats itself again, and we lose 6 players, you know, I fail to see any international team in a knockout tournament at the pressures of that.
Prepped, yeah.
No, that can
with
survive.
that.
Like New Zealand lose all those players, they don't win the World Cup, and I fully do believe that. But let's say we do lose. If you're looking at, you want your second number 10 to be as up to speed as possible and be able to navigate that. But you know, even if he was dropped into that game at having played 2 or 3 seasons, he wasn't changing the result of that game. You know, Argentina had
problems everywhere else.
You know, you lost Paulie, you lost across the board.
It was unprecedented, wasn't it?
It was carnage.
It was typical Irish jinxing.
The only
it's like,
concern,
don't lose these guys and we'll be fine. And hence all 6 of them got out.
Would you have a concern, D'Arcy, with maybe game management? So I wouldn't. That's the one that I think about, because obviously from a football point of view, we saw him against Fiji. The step, the pass, you can't coach that. It's just natural ability, outstanding ability. But probably the one concern is, and for your 10, in the wet, mucky defensive game where you're placing the ball, Sexton is the master.
That comes
at
with
it.
experience, though,
So
doesn't it?
that's where he probably needs to be exposed if Joe Schmidt can in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, on that, we had Fiona Steed on OTB AM a couple of weeks ago, and I put it to her, although this would infuriate Johnny Sexton, who wants to play every game, should Joe Schmidt start him in Joey Carbery if he's fit? Because we know the wrist, we don't know when it's going to heal. He has to get the cast off first, and then it could be anything from 3 to 6 weeks by the time he's able to get back to full training and full contact. But would you start him against Italy? Would you start him against maybe Italy and Scotland, or Italy and Wales, and leave Johnny on the bench? As angry as that would make Johnny, it's not necessarily Johnny's decision to make, so that you're getting Joey Carbery proper game time in a genuine test match against a top tier side when everything's at stake.
Well, I think kind of just to feed off of Quinny's point, he's saying, I actually thought his game management in the Fiji game was actually quite good. His when he chose to kick, why he was kicking, were all really spot on. It just happened to be quite a disjointed game.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I think Sexto is probably in a place where he's quite, you know, he seems pretty happy, and I know that's not generally said about Johnny, but he seems quite content with life, and you know, back in Dublin playing really well, injury free, and all these kind of things. And once you hit a certain point in your career, you understand that you can't play every game, and you can see it. Like we've been reading about Messi saying that, you know, he's happy to play less games now and for the quality. I don't think. I think Johnny will, if anything, that'll bring him up to a higher level, because he's if there's 12 international games a season, I'm going to play 7 or 8 of them. You know, that's a brilliant way for him to focus his game. And we've seen time and time again the amount of times he's out for 3, 4, 5 weeks, hits the ground running, and just it's like he's never been out. So I think.
Well, if you were still, in your mind, at the peak of your powers, fully fit, going into a Six Nations Championship, maybe one of the final 3 or 4 Six Nations Championship you would play in if you're injury free, and you're told, well, we're actually going to sit you out for 2 of them, you'd be absolutely bulling, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but it did happen to me.
Yeah, well, it happened because someone was picked ahead of you because they thought they were the form player in that position. If you're told this isn't actually to do with form, this is because we need to give this guy a run in the 10 jersey.
Well, it wasn't, you know, without going too deeply into it, it wasn't.
Go on, let's go on as deep as you wish.
No, it wasn't fully based on form. It was about utilising players, and it was, you know, and again, I was at the stage. So when we won in 2014, I'm 34 years of age. To say I was going to play every match in the Six Nations at the full. Now, it doesn't make it any easier when you say, listen, you're not playing against things, but I was still picked in against England. I was still picked in the against.
But you
France.
were fit, raring to go.
Yeah,
can't have been easy. An easy watch.
You know, there's a huge confirmation bias on my side saying, well, yeah, I know I'm perfect, I'm ready to go. But if you're the coach and you're objective and you're looking at it, you're going, okay, well, I've got resources here that I can now utilise. So yeah, you're talking about Joey starting against Italy. I think that's a fair I think that's a fair statement to make. From the start against Wales, maybe not so much, and against Italy, maybe not so much. But I think you could see him starting to get reintroduced a little bit more. You saw in the November Internationals, the first time.
20 minutes. He'll get
but in the November Internationals, the first time ever we've seen a series of selections that was pre-made before the tournament, before the 3-match started, and he kept to it almost rigidly. Players were in, players were out. See Andrew Conway not really involved for the third game. That was pre-made. All these decisions were done, and he stuck to it. So you can see him trying to go towards this.
And the players will probably have been told that as well. So I think there's a room to play Carbery in Australia. You know, I'm not saying that Sexton will stay at home or not, and
I think he will.
Johnny Sexton, it might be an opportunity to say, look, we've 3 tests in Australia, we've a World Cup coming up the year after. Take the summer off. He's had a fair kind of run at it. Injuries, the concussions, being in France, all that stuff. It might be an opportunity to go with Carbery in Australia.
The Irish version of a sabbatical for the...
Yeah, because he won't get one afterwards. You think New Zealand, Argentina next year, they'll have a Tier 2 nation again in November. Will that be adequate preparation for Carbery? Paddy Jackson may be back in the mix. Who knows? But when you head into 2019, there's not a lot of wriggle room then for making changes and looking at those kind of options. But he'd probably get X number of games with Leinster at 10 as well in that period. But I don't see it as a major thing. For me, as a former forward, I don't know if D'Arcy will agree or not, if the pack deliver up front, it's much easier for any fly half. I know he's got the big decisions to make, where he plays, the territory, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, that game against Argentina wasn't down to Ian Madigan and Johnny Sexton being gone. I think up front we lost that battle early on. We lost the collisions. We lost the physical side of it. And even if Sexton was playing that day, as good as he is, I'm not sure. His presence is massive as well. Even in a bit of adversity, he's shown that. But
it doesn't matter who's playing 10. If you take Paul O'Connell, Peter O'Mahony and Sean O'Brien away,
yeah, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter.
Life very difficult.
I wouldn't say it doesn't matter, but maybe we kind of look at it. You know, Madigan had played really well when he'd been involved in Ireland for all his caps as well. You know, so I think, like Dar said, you take 5-6 out of any team, they're a different side, and the opposition sense vulnerability as well.
Is David Nucifora surveying all of this? Is he looking at the overall sense of things, and at what point does he think, right, Joey Carbery needs to be getting some game time? I know it's not an immediate thing, I think we've established that already, but is there a danger of that happening potentially too soon?
There's an incredible danger of trying to guess David Nucifora's game plan or his thought process.
Sure.
Because we get very little information from him, and
publicly, I think Leo and Leo will be, you know, he'll have a strong opinion on that. But you know, I say behind the scenes they're probably having conversations, but ultimately they've got to back the provinces as well. There is certain amount of, I wouldn't say interference, but dialogue between all the coaches, provincial coaches, because that's just the way the structure is. But he can't kind of ultimately tell Leo Cullen, well, he has to play this number of games to be in Joe's squad. Like Joe and Leo, I'm sure, have a good relationship. They work together, so I'm sure those conversations will have, but it won't be to the point of telling him.
No one's going to be dictating who he's.
Well, I don't think so. D'Arcy probably knows that dynamic better.
You know, they're inextricably linked, but then they're also completely working against each other at various different times. Like Leo's mandate is to win a Heineken Cup and to win a Pro 12, and in the same breath have players ready for the national team, where the national team don't really mind if or care. Well, you know, they can work without a provincial team having any success, as long as players are playing at high quality games and playing and playing at a high level throughout the season. So, you know, we're used to success in the provinces, and I've come from that system where we have provincial success feeds into the national success, and that is becoming harder and harder because the European goalposts have changed so dramatically, and the resources in Ireland have gotten, you know, haven't expanded at the same rate as our competition. So it's a really interesting puzzle, and how it fits together, I don't think anybody's going to crack that anytime soon.
All of this started with the discussion around Joey Carbery and Eddie's comments on him maybe needing to move elsewhere. one player who's definitely moving elsewhere is Jordy Murphy. It's been confirmed this week that he's signed a 2-year deal to move to Ulster at the end of the season. And I just wonder, is this something that we're going to see more of, Alan, in the years to come, that we're finally going to get ourselves into a position where we're utilising the resources of the 4 provincial provinces, the 4 teams that we have available to pick the international side from, and not have a logjam in one position at one province and maybe a little bit of a lack of resources in that same position in another province?
It's a player's decision. I think Jordy would have looked at probably the competition in Leinster and where he's at. You think 12 months ago he was starting against the All Blacks. He ruptures his Achilles. The competition there with Van der Fleer and Levy after coming on the scene as well. So there's 3 top quality, outstanding open sides there. So he's made a decision probably, which is a brave one, because sometimes guys stay, and we'll give it another year, and suddenly things haven't changed. I'm sure Leo Cullen would have loved to have him. If 2 of them are gone with Ireland, they have 2 at home. They can play 6, 7, 8 as well. So is it something that we're going to see more of? It's completely down to the players. I think, you know, David Nucifora, Joe, can talk to the player and say, look, would you not consider maybe there's a weakness here, and they would try and manage him if for example, with Munster, Chris Clute, South African, is signed a couple of months ago. I would rather see Jordy Murphy down in Munster playing as a 7. I think he would do really well there. The crowd would love him. He's aggressive. He's a popular guy and a very good player. But we have a South African there instead of a 7, whereas he's gone up north to Ulster, which is a good move for him as well. He'll play games. There's options to play in the back row up there.
Is the culture shifting though? 10 years ago you wouldn't have countenanced this happening too often. There were players maybe on the fringes, the likes of Felix Jones heading down to Munster, the likes of Niall Ronan, for example. We've seen Andrew Conway go from Leinster down to Munster as well. Luke Fitzgerald, if we believe the stories, was close enough to moving to Munster. Ian Madigan would have perhaps had an option of going to one of them. Guys,
younger guys who maybe weren't kind of...
But given they had much time these guys spent in Irish camp together,
I think that's an end result. I think that's you're looking at that maybe at the end result. I think there's a bigger issue, which is the underlying that there isn't. So Leinster, because they have a backlog in their back row, they're coming through the private school system. They're coming up, and that's, you know, that is what it is. But every year they are having to play 50 players in a season, so they are being forced because they lose. Over half of they lose 20 players, 25 players to the Six Nations or to the national team every year. So they're being forced to blood players more so than the other, and it puts a huge, strain on the resources in the academies. Going, you have to deliver, because we will need 8 players every season, maybe 10 players every season to be filling into a team, and we still want to challenge for the Pro 12. The other provinces don't have. Connacht, you know, we see players coming through their system, but we don't see it in Munster and we don't see it in Ulster to the same extent. And you have to be careful with that, because you are seeing a Stockdale coming through, and you are seeing a couple of young forwards in Munster making that same progress. But coming back to the Jordy Murphy thing, the movement of players. Yeah, I think it's only natural that is going to happen, but if you're looking at it reasonably unbiasedly, you look at it that it's going to be depleting the Leinster stocks, because there isn't the same strength and depth in maybe the other provinces. So, you know, is that fair? Is that equitable? Only if these guys move, and then, you know, Jordy is always in the Irish camp from the Ulster team, and one less back row is then staying in Leinster.
So they're victims of their own success.
Absolutely, in the same way the IRFU were victims of their own success in the last, you know, since 2009, unprecedented success. You know, and it's very naive to think you're going to have all this success and try and keep all your players at the same quantum of money as you were a few years ago.
And it does hit your resource, because when you've 17, 18 guys away with Ireland, the law of averages states that most teams will have 6, 7, 8 injuries at any given time. Now Leinster are in good health at the moment, they've only a couple, but we see with the other provinces a number of guys who are out injured. So you're up on 25 players there. He then has to find another 23 or 30 players to mix and manoeuvre.
He used over 50 players last season.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. So, but in saying that, they have more numbers here in Dublin. They have the school system is producing a lot of quality. But you're right, Leinster won't be happy. They would rather keep Jordy Murphy. But I think it comes down to the individual. I think Leo would have been pretty honest probably and said, look, I can't guarantee any of the 3 open sides the starting berth, because on their day, all 3 are outstanding.
But Jordy Murphy's thinking, this is with one eye on the World Cup. He's not thinking, I want to be playing more rugby for Leinster.
Matches. He's playing matches,
Exactly.
play matches, play
and he'll
matches.
start Champions Cup games for Ulster.
And if he goes up and plays 20 games up in Ulster next season, or 25 games, or whatever the number is, he's getting battle hardened, he's getting match fitness, and the injury probably would have played a role in this, because when you were out
week in, week out, so Joe's going to look at players and say, well, how many minutes have you got? You know, he looks at statistics look better over the more games you play. So it's an ambitious step by him.
But you get better with games as well, Lars, don't you? Your match fitness, your hardness. Yeah, well, some guys, in rare instances, but particularly in the back row, it's you've so many involvements in the game. And if you're playing week in, week out and getting big numbers, 17, 18, 20 games in the season, you're improving. You have an ability to work on stuff. You can get the feedback from the coaches. And like D'Arcy was saying, Joe can look then and say, well, here's your stats, here are your numbers. And Van der Fleer might, having to play half a games, or Dan Levy or whoever starts at 7 for Leinster, and he might leapfrog one of those. And then suddenly there's an injury, Sean O'Brien pulls a hammer, or something goes wrong, and he's in. And then once you get in, you play one good game in that green jersey, and you hold on to it, you know, if you perform at a high level. So, but it's an unbelievably competitive area. If there's 8 or 9 guys in Leinster that could all play for Ireland, all start for Leinster. There's a couple of guys coming through that are still in school that I've heard names being mentioned to me that they're outstanding players. Max Deegan, he's someone who is, you know, a brilliant player, and it depends what happens Jamie Heaslip, but he's probably 3rd choice, number 8. He's probably got to make a decision. What do I do? Do I want to make a real drive and try and push out one of these guys and play in another province or go somewhere else? Leinster won't want to lose him, of course.
Just on that point of the academies and how kind of high-powered their engine has to work to produce all these players, is it producing quality as well as the quantity? Like, I think Jacob Stockdale is a great example to actually analyse this point in. Like, would Jacob Stockdale have been an outstanding player regardless of what academy he came through, regardless of what country he came through? Because it seems to me that this is a very, very special talent. Or do we have the IRFU to thank here and say, right, they got the best out of a gem that needed to be polished anyway?
I think Stockdale was going to come through regardless. I saw him at the Under-20s World Cup, and he stood out in that game, and you know, it stood out like you would expect a Bowden Barr to stand out at an Under-20 World Cup. He was absolutely incredible. The academies, you know, like Tyg Furlong and Marty Moore, when these guys were coming through the academy, they knew there was a shortage of front row stocks, and they just brought guys in, brought them in. And then they eventually, you know, the more you bring in, the higher chance you have of success. Yes, there is a bigger player population and in Dublin and in Leinster, and you know, but that is what it is. So the strategy that works in Dublin can't work in Munster, in Connacht, and in Ulster, and they have to. If you roll out the same formats, you're going to have vastly different results. Where's the investment in underage rugby in Leinster and primarily in Dublin comes from goes into the clubs, and you've got that, and again you have that population density, and that's going to feed up naturally into the private schools and ergo into the academies. That doesn't happen in Munster, where you can go down to Nina and you know. Are they having the same numbers that Lansdowne have on a Saturday morning? If not, why not? How do they get them? Where's that rural investment? Where are they getting all of these clubs? It is a harder job to be done in Munster, in Connacht, and in Ulster. But that doesn't make it that's not an excuse for it not to be delivering. It just has to be done differently.
And if you put 100 young lads out, stand them outside there in one corner, put 20 over there, you've more options with that 100 for sure to get, if you're picking 10 guys out as opposed to the 20. So the numbers do make a difference, but the system makes a difference as well. My little fella's playing under 8s or under 9s with St Mary's in school.
But
I went up to St Michael's 2 weeks ago to watch a game. there's about 15 games going on at one time. Like, it's astronomical.
But that's my point. That is happening
all over the place.
But that's not due to Leinster or due to IRFU. They feed into it when it's organised. But why is that not happening in some iteration in Munster?
They have more threats around the GAA and soccer and all that. I know they still have threats, but it's a numbers game as well, D'Arcy.
You've got to go back to the
in Munster. Make a difference.
Going back to the end point is the academies aren't delivering, so there needs to be an investment at the grassroots level. And if you don't have the investments, you're talking about numbers. If you don't get numbers invested at that stage, you're not going to have an academy system.
What if the numbers just aren't there? We see it. I see it when I bring my little fella to his TOTS GA training on a Saturday morning. There are 150 kids there, and that has been replicated across 70 or 80 other clubs in Dublin. That no other county can compete with those kind of numbers. So you're saying that, well, how do you get the numbers up? Well, they just don't exist in the vast majority of places where rugby is played in this country.
But they exist for GAA in other parts of the country. Like, that is a culture that I presume is created over years. That the whole Saturday morning thing.
But I've been blown away by.
They'll have it there. I go down to Wexford every now and then, and they will still have 200 kids. Maybe not 200. They might have 100 kids on a Saturday or Sunday morning. But it's done by Wexford Wanderers. And is there another Tyke Furlong in there? That's not getting the polishing and the nurturing that could bring through.
The point, D'Arcy, is Wexford Wanderers have 100 kids there. Who else around that area has another 100? Whereas if you go to Dublin, there's 200 in St Michael's, there's 200 down in St Michael's. I know, absolutely. It is a numbers game. I think the academy, the structures come from the IRFU and the academy. So I always work off this example. With Munster, the replacing Ronan O'Gara, who you played most of your career with Ireland, probably all your career. Ronan was outstanding talent. Where was the replacement? Where was the Joey Carberry? Where was the Paddy Jackson? Where was the Johnny Sexton in Munster coming through to challenge him? He played for 15 years with Munster. There was 6A schools at the time in the province, or 6 or 7 maybe. I stand corrected. So that's 15 years by 7. You're talking about a couple of maybe 100, 150, 200 out halves who played in those schools teams. Not one that I can remember came through with the ability to challenge him.
But sure, you can look at Leinster as well. I mean, Johnny Sexton was playing for Leinster for 9 years now.
Yeah, they're unique
There
players.
hasn't been a single 10 that's come through the Leinster Academy that has been able to challenge him to the point where he's in danger of losing his place.
My point is, sometimes it can be a bit of luck as well. It can be a number 5 really talented guys in a certain number of positions come through at the same time. When I played with Munster, some of the players we had, that was nothing to do with academies. That was nothing to do with, it was more to do with the club system that you're saying. And we kind of were unique that we had just a group of guys at a time.
You can't separate the professional game from the club game. And
no, not at all. I agree.
It's painful and it's unpalatable, but if you do not invest in that game, so you're saying there may not be the population, but you can double, you might be able to get more players in if it's invested in it, if the facilities are, not the facilities, but if the coaching is of a higher standard, if it's enjoyable, if it's well run. The one thing you go into Gaelic and you go into GAA, it's GAA and hurling. You go in, you've got ex-players in there and that have played probably inter-county hurling or football, but it's run like clockwork. It's, you go in, kids dropped off, and I see it, and they're just run out. You go into a rural rugby club and it's 2 people who may not have even played rugby and it's basically a glorified crash. That is not going to produce the next Ronan O'Gara or the next Johnny Sexton to take over that. That investment needs to be put in if you want to create viable academies in the other 3 provinces. And I'm happy to be wrong in that, but I do think there is an investment, a certain level of investment that needs to go in there.
Just on that point, because it kind of ties in nicely with the Peter O'Mahony situation and your column yesterday in terms of what funding is actually being given, because we obviously don't know what's on the table in the Peter O'Mahony deal, but we don't know what's on the table for the academies either, or what's being put into grassroots, if I'm correct there.
Yeah, and again, like there is a vacuum of information around this, and that is what it is. There's no point in labouring that. We don't know what is invested into it, but I think the professional game is heavily reliant on that private school production conveyor belt in Dublin, and the other couple of gems that come through and would come through anyway. Peter O'Mahony was going to come through. Stockdale is going to would have come through. Robbie Henshaw would come through. They would come through regardless where they were or where they were playing.
I want to mention what you were writing about this week. You wrote incredibly well on your experiences of dealing with the IRFU when it comes to these contract negotiations, and obviously Ian Henderson, Peter O'Mahony, CJ Stander, they're all in the headlines over the last couple of weeks, and players will always feel they deserve more. No matter what you give them, they'll always feel, well, look, maybe I'm meriting a bit more. But you talked about the contract you signed in 2010. It's all you take a hefty pay cut while you felt you were still at the peak of your powers, as you put it yesterday. Do the RFU use that year was coming into a World Cup year? Did they use that against you, knowing how desperate you were to play?
Though, the bigger one, and the one he came down was still massive.
I didn't have the puppy dog eyes to go in. Oh please, can I have a bigger contract?
But it was a World Cup cycle coming to the end of it. You were desperate to play in that World Cup. Did they use that against you?
It's good negotiation. Like, I think, you know, anything works reasonably off a bell chart, and once you pass your peak. They had decided 30. They played a really good. They had to concede on the two previous contracts, and they felt this is a time where we can take something back. And
so
I was a little bit. You know, it prepared me for the next one, because thank God that was like jumping off a cliff. But yeah, that one was hard to get your head around initially, but then you kind of have to look at it a little bit reflectively and go, yeah, I'm a depreciating asset. I think I'm brilliant and I think I'm going to play forever. I'm not. They're looking at that going 31. The average age of a graduate career is 8 years in professional contract. A professional rugby. This guy's been playing for 12 years at this stage. So yeah, we're going to take something back here. And you know, I went and found some Mickey Mouse thing. You know, it was a little bit extra, but I was like, you know what? I'm actually happy to stay here. But at least at that point, I was given the opportunity to get back to my base salary through performance fees. So if I played all the games, if I hit all my bonuses, I could get back to where I was. So at least there was a huge carrot in that. So it wasn't completely whipped out from underneath me. But had that happened at 27, is the case.
Even this close to a World Cup. So let's put yourself in the O'Mahony/Stander situation.
Yeah, I think there is definitely, it's a different mindset, because I was 30. I was 31. My life is fully ensconced. I was getting married in the near future. My wife may not have known that at the time, but
so take 4 years off that. And add the increased value in contracts that are available in France.
At the time, it was a very easy contract with the IRFU. So I went in and said, guys, that's the offer. I said, no. This is what I want. And it more or less happened. I played the Six Nations with a contract and played well and got it. That's fine. But if there was an offer on the table that was, you know, going to double my salary, and I think there is a balance in there, and I'm not sure we're at that point yet. There is a nice equilibrium point where yes, you can stay in Ireland and you get to play for Ireland, but I don't think putting a price on playing for Ireland is fair both ways. I think you can't say you have to take, because if you say, well, you're staying here to play for Ireland, you're putting a price on it by taking less. So I do think there is definitely a midway point, for argument's sake. If it's €100 and you're being asked to stay in Ireland for 30, to me that's not fair. But around that 50, 55, 60 euros, I think you are starting to get to a point where you're saying, yeah, this is worth taking less, because I will be able to earn if you're saying I'm staying in Ireland, I'm going to be better protected, I'm going to have a longer career. You at least have the opportunity to earn in the aggregate, and you play for longer.
And there's the corporate side of things, the sponsorship side of things, that you leave yourself, your profile will increase if you stay over here.
I don't know about that. You'd have to refer that to my learning.
Well, you should have known about it then if you didn't.
Listen, lad, there was about 5 or 6 other stories I wanted to touch on, but we need to mention the games that are coming up this weekend. We've got Munster Leicester Tigers live from Thomond Park. It's a 7:45 kickoff and off the ball this Saturday evening, and next weekend we're doing the whole show from the Aviva Stadium when Leinster take on Exeter in what could be an absolutely huge game in round 4 of the pool stages. Munster, Alan, this is the Leinster pool at the moment, Gordon, so we'll start with that. I mean, certainly the top three teams, Leinster, Exeter and Montpellier, will all feel they're still very much in it at the moment. Glasgow obviously out. Back-to-back games against Exeter. They're in a good place, Leinster, at the moment. At least they're top of the pool.
Yeah.
What do they need to get out of Sandy Park? And if they lose and leave with nothing?
At least the top of the pool, yeah. I've the experience of playing against Exeter. They are a brilliant team. I absolutely love them. I love their whole business model. I love the way they play rugby, I think they're just absolutely fantastic. It's a brilliant game of rugby, and it kind of stirs the emotions a little bit when you're thinking back to the brilliant memories you have from playing in the Champions Cup or the old Heineken Cup. This is a game where you're kind of getting your teeth into it. Leinster are playing brilliant rugby. They're fully fit. Players are well rested after the November internationals, after the Lions. They didn't have to get out of second gear really in the November internationals. They're coming in really, really fresh, and Leinster are playing really, really well. They need to be playing well against Exeter. Exeter just have that complete faith in their game plan, and they just keep going and keep going. I remember playing in the RDS, and it was like I think we won by 2 points, and only afterwards did I think, I probably expected to win by more there.
They just wouldn't go away that day.
Just horrific. Their ability, their composure. Slade is an incredible player for them as well. Jack Noel coming into it. So this is I'm really, really excited about this game as a neutral, as a guy with a blue, always with a blue lens on. This is a tough game for Leinster to win, and I don't think anyone in Leinster is taking it for granted. The away game, always favours the home team, but just the way Exeter play, they can just grind you away. This will be where we're talking about tactics earlier on. This will have to be a tactical masterclass from Johnny to get something out of this, but they need to get something out of it.
From Munster's point of view, Quinny, it's such an awkward pool at the moment, isn't it? And where would you have them in terms of the likelihood of them getting out of it, given that they didn't manage to put Racing away with a bonus point? They let Racing leave Thomond Park with a bonus point. They have to go to Welford Road in a week's time. And even Cast, having got that draw and the bonus point in their second game, they'll still feel they're in it if they can pick something up in the back-to-back games against Racing. This is not going to be a pool that will offer up a best runner-up.
Well, round 3 and 4, that kind of dictates where you're going to end up. I think you fairly, you want to be kind of standing in round 4 and say, right, we're still in it heading into 5 and 6, or else you can be out of it. It can be very clear cut if you lose these 2 games. Leicester lost 38-0 to Munster last year in this fixture. What will they be thinking coming back? Matt O'Connor.
They turned it around a week later, didn't they?
It makes no sense in some ways. 18-16, they won against Munster a week after. They're 6th in the Premiership. They've lost 4 games. They lost the last 2, so they're not the superpower they were. Either are Munster for sure. I think Munster are under a lot more pressure because of the injury profile they have at the moment. I think with Taute out, Farrell out, Earls out, that affects him in the back line. The uncertainty around 10 this year. I think Keatley's played quite well. His confidence looks to be higher. Blaine has a lot of indecision. And
there's the pool now. It's
you look at Leinster on 10 points after 2 rounds. They can afford to possibly lose 2 games, Leinster, and still they'll make 20 points. They'll be in the knockout stages. So they could have this series with this little mini series with Exeter, or else they're capable of going win there. But I think Munster, first and foremost, they've just got to focus on this weekend, which sounds very simplistic. They've got to grind
spot on. Like, it doesn't really matter what happened.
They have to grind out a result.
They lose this weekend, they're out.
Well, that's the thing. Will they be hoping for a game like the Racing game, as in whoever blinks first wins?
Just grind out a result. I think they could play better. Hopefully, you'd want it to go better, but it's all about just 4 points this weekend. That's all they can focus on, and then hope that they can be in a good shape the week after. And if they lose, get a bonus point coming away, and then really, after round 4, like I said, look into 5 and 6 and say, well, we've got to go and beat Racing, and we've got to beat Cast at home, and hopefully you're on that 18, 19 point mark and you're in the quarterfinals. I don't think it's a pool where you're going to have a team topping the pool and having a home quarterfinal. I think this is just about getting out of the group, this pool. So it's very interesting to see where they're at. They've had so much change in the last number of weeks. They've about 6 guys to come back into the team this weekend, which will give them a huge boost. But the injury profile is horrendous. And what does Van Grand do in 2 weeks since he's come in? This is his second week.
Talk about a baptism of fire, Gordon.
Nothing.
I mean,
they've
lashed him in at the deep end. He's had 1 game to get his feet on the table. I think I've thrown 3 cliches in there in 1 sentence. But they managed to get past the Ospreys. You're taking on Leicester in the Champions Cup in your 2nd game. That's as tough as it gets. You could actually be heading over there first, but I mean, it's not far off it.
Yeah, it could be an awful lot worse.
It's a different Leicester though, D'Arcy. It's not like one of the dominant old Leicester sides. So
yeah, they're playing. They are
Their back line is actually stronger than their pack.
Yeah, but they are having a little bit of a resurgence under Matt O'Connor, and he has that, you know, whatever issues he had with trying to get his game plan into the Leinster, you know, get that wealth of knowledge that he has across, it just didn't translate. But he speaks the Leicester language. And, you know, I think that's very, I think he's avoiding inch columns by saying he's no animosity coming back to Leinster and wants to focus on the...
How do you reflect on his time as Leinster coach a couple of years out? I mean, he delivered a Pro 12 championship and a European semi-final where you came within a whisker of winning it.
Yeah, like, you know, he also dropped me for the last 6 months of my career, so like that's hard to that's hard to take. That's hard. Like, and that's
well, you're never going to like a coach that doesn't pick you.
No, and but again, you know, and again, I had to look at that myself personally, and I kind of go, well, in the time when I was in it, was there? I can't believe I'm not playing. I suppose when you look back at it and go, mistakes creeping in, probably was moving towards a 20. Had I played a season too long, and all those kind of questions. I just don't think Matt was. He has a great philosophy on rugby and how to play it and ball in hand and all that kind of that approach to rugby, which is good in the modern game. His ability to translate it and get it across it just didn't fit in the lens, and that happens. So it just wasn't a perfect fit for him and for Leinster, and I don't think anybody would disagree with it. I think he's back in a club that, you know, oddly enough, he probably would have suited a Munster team where it is very much where your heart, not where your heart in your sleeve, but that confrontational approach which resonates quite strongly with them. But you know, for Van Graan, you know, what does he do here?
He just tries to inspire. I think that's all he can do is get into the players' heads.
But I think you kind of almost have to break it, look at it, and just go back to it, and kind of almost that 81-minute approach, and just say, as if we deliver, if we do it, if we go back to the Racing game, we go back to look at these things we can do. We just have to do it for 80 tiny little battles. We just have to be perfect. Low discipline. We're playing at home. Let's just get 4 points here, and whatever happens over there, we'll worry about that. Munster there is that spirit in Munster rugby. It is in there. It's still there for the moment with Peter O'Mahony. So, you know, hopefully someone like him can, whatever. The great thing about having backs injured is forwards don't have to give the ball out there. So if there's 3 or 4 injuries in the backs, and you've got Keatley who's playing well, just play something that probably fits. Probably fits. So the only difference is they don't have a back row who, like yourself, who will walk across the 10 channel, move into first receiver, kick the ball, and make all decisions for everybody else.
He used to always give out to me like that in training. Get out of the way. Himself and Trico route.
It's not frustrating. It's not frustrating. It's not frustrating at all when you're
in the early part of your career. You would have had Keith Wood probably battling for the exact same space with him, trying to clear their lines, trying to exit the 22.
Just one last point. Frano today in the Indo is saying that Rassie Erasmus has left Munster in the shit a little bit. Is that too harsh?
He's described his decision to up sticks mid-season as unforgivable.
We'll see. You know what? I thought about that. I thought about all the great stuff he did last year, the way he handled the Axel situation, the way he inspired people, and he was brilliant at all that. But part of me was very angry that he's jumping ship, particularly after saying, I'm here for the 3 years, I'm going to see out my contract. And I think it's the last thing Munster needed, was that unsettling scenario again, where now we've created something, we've built a little momentum going forward. The guy who does it is now gone. The players loved him, and they loved Nienaber as well, I think, the defensive coach. So they had a little bit of stability, a foundation to build on, and an ability probably to attract in some players. So I think players would have wanted to, I want to go to Rassie Erasmus. I'm hearing all these wonderful stories. He seemed like a very humble guy, very mannerly, very good impression of him in the media, all that stuff. And that kind of tickles players' fancies as well. So then you have Van Graan in, and it's the uncertainty. He's never been a head coach. You know, Donncha Ryan leaves. That's a massive blow from he kind of epitomised what's everything about Munster. Zebo's leaving, the injury profiles. They signed Grobler, he gets injured, Tauta gets injured. So they've had a few hammer blows. Now they've Mahoney standard. There's not any good stories coming. So he's kind of going back to the Van Graan piece. I think Rassie did leave him in the I won't use the word you used, Owen, but in the shit a bit.
I just think it's a little bit disingenuous. You know, they are all very, very educated people, And to come out with a statement like that in January, when clearly a conversation must have taken place. You can say, oh, well, I was trying not to unsettle the team. There is different rhetoric you can use to say, okay, well, let's talk about it in the summer. And, you know, it at least leaves something there, and players can maybe start getting ready to it. I just, you know, it's almost a very soccer thing where it's like, oh, I'm absolutely, definitely, 100%. Oh, actually, I'm going.
Yeah. Anything can happen in football. They finished the end. You hear him.
Well, it was clear the players felt that he had decided to stay.
Well, he told the players. He told Niall Scannell came out after one of the games that he's definitely staying, and he announced that. So I don't know where this translation or communication broke down, but ultimately it's the last thing they needed.
But it's an international job, so I have no problem with a player, and you know, coaches will do that, and they've built it into their contracts. There's just a way to do something, and then there's a way not to do it.
Bloody release clause, I don't know about it.
This was the epitome of how not to do it, particularly for a club that was really vulnerable, and the trajectory of Munster over the next 2 seasons is really, really important for that club, as with their history, but also for Irish rugby. And I don't think he has helped it. He's kind of left it in a kind of a net position.
And
came in, did loads of really good things, and has left it in a bad.
I actually thought, here's potential next Irish coach. If you know, if things keep going well, maybe when Joe Schmidt leaves, that he had that kind of standing. The big thing that I heard from the players a lot and from the environment was his presence. It was really calm. Players were wary of him. He spoke so well. He just managed the whole ship really well. And then you have your coaches out in the field, and he was their leader, kind of the head person. And Axel and himself, when they were together, I love the way he handled that transition with Axel, that he didn't come in saying, well, I'm the boss now and I'm taking over. He let Axel be the head coach. He sat back. He managed that whole transition with him. They worked together, and you know, I said this before, the week before Axel passed away, I never saw him happier as regards coaching. He was really, really, and he didn't smile too much at the times. He grunted. Yeah. And we always slagged him about that. But he was comfortable with what happened. From being told, well, there's a director of rugby coming in, you're thinking, where's my job? What's going on? Is someone going to be, have I any control anymore? That whole thing went really smooth. So I think his approach to dealing with people was outstanding. So I do think he left him in the lurch a bit.
It's a pity he
didn't do anything.
It has.
Well, so we'll
but
know.
he was the right man at the right place at the right time.
Absolutely, he was
in a
brilliant.
horrible situation.
And to be fair, he was brilliant. We'll know in a couple of weeks. If Munster don't make knockout stages of Europe, what's going to come up? The debate over Rassi leaving, the injuries, Zebo leaving, you know.
Standard and Mahoney contract talks.
Yeah, all that stuff will come up.
Storm.
You know, if they do well, Van Gran will say, well, the transition has been good.
Yeah, I'm sure our Ulster viewers and Connacht fans will be watching us this morning saying, well, you haven't mentioned them. Ulster back-to-back games at Queen's. They're at the Stoop this weekend. They are in a bad situation. Their pool, they pretty much have to take 6, 7, possibly 2 wins out of the back-to-back games of Queen's. Connacht riding high in the Challenge Cup. That's where they've shown their best form lately in the season, but unfortunately is now starting to unravel again. Gordon and Alan, it's been brilliant. We could have been here for another couple of hours. Thanks so much for your time.